You've just listened to a sample of AM's music. This electronic artist has joined us in studio today to talk to us. Hi, I'm with Andrew Moore, who's also known as AM. He calls himself an independent electronic artist. So Andrew, tell me, what is that?
Well, electronic music basically is any kind of music that uses synthesizers. So when it started like in the 70s and 80s, that's pretty much all that it meant, is exclusively synthesized sounds. But over the years, it's kind of come to include a lot of different things. So for me personally, it includes synthesizers, but it also includes live instruments and samples and sort of found sounds, so things that you record in everyday life.
How did you come up with the name AM?
Well, that's my initials, first of all. But it's really hard to come up with a name, so I just sort of went by that because that's how I would always have to sign my name on things. And it also, there's kind of like the AM radio, I don't know, influence or whatever. So
Describe your music.
My music is basically kind of ambient sounding, usually pretty chilled sort of music that uses a lot of, like I said, live recording, and uses a lot of electronic sounds and a lot of instruments that I play myself and some that I get sort of friends of mine to play. And we had a computer to record our stuff with, and sort of in our downtime I just kind of mess around and play around with sort of sampling different things, because I was a big fan of like DJs and sample music, but I never really knew how to do it. So I just sort of in our downtime with the band, I would just sort of cut things together myself and just sort of play around a bit. And eventually I had enough stuff that I'd accumulated over the years that I was like, well, hey, I could put out an album with this stuff. So, and then eventually the band sort of split up and people went their own ways, and I just kind of kept on going and luckily inherited the computer, so there we go.
Have you always had an interest in music and sounds?
Oh, absolutely. I was in a choir when I was a kid. I took piano for 10 years. I've done all sorts of different types of music, and part of what I'm into is sort of recognizing music in like everyday sounds, sort of thing.
When you're not making music, what else do you do?
I'm a teacher. I teach grade 8 at a private school in North York. I teach English and social studies.
Wow, so how do you balance your time between being a teacher and making music?
Well, luckily, teaching is one of those careers that sort of affords you a lot of time off, right? So in the summer and over Christmas and March break, which is right now, I get to sort of do a lot of that stuff on the side.
Have you ever played your music to your students then?
Yeah, some of them. Well, actually, before this year, I was teaching grade 4, and grade 4s like think that anything you do is cool. And so, but now teaching grade 8s, they're kind of like, yeah, you're not cool, you're a grown-up. So they're not as into it as the grade 4s were. But there was one song actually that I recorded some of my students for. It was a song called Boom Snap Clap. And it was just one day at recess, I saw them doing this sort of rhythmical hand clapping thing, and I thought it sounded really neat. And I happened to have a digital recorder with me. So I recorded them doing this thing and kind of mixed it in with some samples and made a song out of it, and they loved it.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm. So then what is your favorite song then?
Of mine, you mean?
Yeah, that you've made, yes.
Well, any song that turns out the way you imagine it in your head is really satisfying. But for me, probably actually that Boom Snap Clap one was my favorite, just because it came so spontaneously, like I didn't really plan it. I just heard them doing it and recorded it, and it turned out really well.
So tell me about your last album, which is called Underground. What's so special about it?
Underground sort of happened one day. Again, goes back to the old rock and roll band days. For one of the songs that we were recording with the band, we needed to get the sound of the subway chimes. And so I went out with a little digital handheld recorder and tried to get that sound. And I just, rather than just wait for the chimes, I just left it on during my whole commute to work. And then when I came home and listened to it, I found it sort of strikingly, I don't know, it was kind of interesting to hear all the different sounds of the things on the subway. And I sort of realized that there was a lot of interesting stuff in there. So I ended up building this sort of whole album around sort of ambient noise in the subway system.
Wow, so how long did it take you to do this?
That project took, all in all, 5 or 6 months. But again, I was sort of working around my teaching schedule, so it wasn't really an intense 5 months. It was just kind of whenever I had time.
How was the response to that album?
The response to that was pretty good. It got a little bit of media attention, and CBC was very good with it, and it got played in various places. So.
What styles of music or musicians inspire you, and how do they affect you to make this music?
Anything really. I mean, you can, and for a sample musician, anything that catches your ear is worth working on. So I mean, I've been inspired by classical music, by blues and jazz, to like DJ Shadow and Lemon Jelly and stuff like that. So basically anything.
So you're currently working on your latest album, and you're asking for a little bit of help. Tell us about that.
What I'm trying to do is I want to sort of make an album that's a snapshot of a day in the life of planet Earth. So I want people to go out on May 23rd and record whatever they do in their everyday life and send those files to me, and then I'm going to make an album out of it.
Okay, that sounds great. Anyways, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
I was just speaking with Andrew Moore. For more information about his music, go to his website at musicbyam.com. Now back to you, Mike.